Just fair warning.
I see that. I see Grace is doing like 1 out of every 10 people often has the like interviewer, like interviewed by the secret police vibe, where like you only see their head and their torso and shadow, but you can't actually see their face at all. And today that's Grace.
Oh, but Emma's in the underground bunker.
I know.
Oh yeah, that's a good look, Emma.
Thank you.
Blair
It's my
Witch
little
Project
Hobbit hut.
4.
Is that the underneath of a bunk bed, Emma?
Yeah. It's actually a pretty cool setup. We've got I share a room with 2, so we've got a loft attached to it.
So the unfortunate thing, Emma, is you sound like a tuba.
Nice.
Now that sounds all right. So maybe we're okay.
Better?
Yeah.
I thought you couldn't make it.
I thought dinner was going to be at 7, but it's okay. I think it's still in the process of being cooked, so I'm all good. Also, I'm wearing my fancy beanie that some really cool person got me.
Oh, nice.
Sorry to interrupt, Stefan.
No, I haven't started yet.
Oh, okay.
Well, we are almost 5 past, Steph, and it might be that this is about everybody we're going to get if you want to get going.
Perfect. Yeah, totally. So what, Amanda, do you want to fill me in on what you guys were talking about already? Have you guys covered a little bit at all?
Just talking about the concept of heart rate zones came up, and that it's important to know when you're actually working in steady state, when you're doing more of a long interval type medium intensity, and then there's a type of work that you can only do at the end of a 2K, or when those 1 minute on, 1 minute off, this when you're really, really pushing yourself hard. And when the coaches are giving workouts, we actually have different intensities in mind, that if you do everything too easy, you're not going to gain the right kind of fitness. And if you do everything way too hard, you're not going to gain the right kind of fitness. And so I sent a link out just to the Concept 2 page that kind of says you need to figure out your resting heart rate, help, subtract your age, like the super basic version that talks about what the zones are. And then we had the briefest conversation about, you can wear a heart rate strap, you can put your fingers in your neck, you can try to figure out what your heart rate is during a run or an erg or those kinds of things. But that's about it, that sort of 2-minute speech with a couple of questions. So, and then I know that it's important to you. I've seen you encourage varsity to check their heart rate, especially when they're doing things like running, when it's not the same as knowing that you're trying to get an erg split, which everyone's more familiar with. But when there's a lot of cross training involved, it's important to know, are you working too hard? Or are you not working hard enough? And how many minutes are you actually working in the right zone? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect basic stuff. So how many of you guys have ever used heart rate working out before? Like, even if you don't know? Maya, yeah, Caroline?
I did it once.
I've never used natural heart rate monitor strap, but I've
Have
taken
you the straps that go around here? I don't know.
I've done the intense mathematical thing.
Hold your pulse for 10 seconds and multiply by 6 kind of thing.
Well, I do 6 and then I multiply by 10 just because my brain isn't as smart during break.
There you go. That's good thinking. So Maya, what have you done with heart rate straps and stuff?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we do these health risk appraisal things at my school, where they have you wear like this heart rate monitor, and then we'll do like a series of exercises, and they'll like take a tally, but it's like it goes. I've used the ones where it just goes like underneath like your bra strap, and then like that's how they measure it.
Nice. And so have you done workouts where you're like checking it and trying to hit a certain thing, or just kind of had it?
Kind of had it like because they track it like all throughout freshman year and then into junior year, and then we get like our results back like kind of like to see how like at the end of junior year. And so we didn't really like check it. It was just kind of like for them to monitor in a way. So I haven't really like done that much.
Okay, cool. So let's start like super basic. Can anybody tell me like why your heart isn't working out? Like why is the heart rate matter at all? Like what is your heart doing?
I have a very logical reasoning I've heard from Amanda. I'm just gonna reword it. Amanda says that we need to know like our proper like heart rate zones, so that like in a 2K we go full all out, but then for steady state we don't go into like the wrong zone.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when you're working out, especially is what we care about, but anytime in your life, right, your heart is circulating blood around your body, right? And so those blood cells are carrying oxygen to all your muscles and helping fuel them. So, when you're looking at heart rate, what you're looking at is like how many times per minute your heart has to beat to move that blood around your body, right? And so the more you train, the stronger you make your heart, the more blood your heart can move with every pump, the lower your heart rate is going to be when you're not working hard. Like Amanda mentioned that you guys might know what resting heart rate is. So that's just kind of like your body's default state of how fast your heart beats when you're not doing anything, right? So the more you guys train, the lower that heart rate's going to be, because your heart is getting more efficient the more you guys work out and the more fit you guys get. So one of the big like key things in thinking about heart rate is it's not like erging, in that like it's not a competition, right? A higher heart rate does not mean you're working harder than somebody else. If anything, usually a lower resting heart rate means that kind of your heart is more like is working more efficiently. But there's tons of variables to it that has to do with like how big or small you are, how tall or short you are, like your genetics play a giant role in it. And so in general, like anytime you're using heart rate, like you're not trying to hit a number because one number is better than another. You're trying to hit like what your body is telling you, right?
I have
So
a question.
yeah, hit me.
How do we know, or like, well, like say we have, or once we get like a heart rate monitor and like we set it up like with like an app, how do we know like the proper zones and like what numbers should we be in between, like or each of our like bodies?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. I have a chart I can show you guys, and we can talk about zones a little bit as well. But yeah, so I think when you're working with heart rate, like the nice things it does, like what Amanda is saying, is it lets you kind of balance how hard you're working and figure out how hard you're working when you don't have that split in front of you. But you can even use it at the same time as you can use an erg split, right? Because the erg will tell you how fast you're going, and your heart rate will tell you how hard hard you're working, which are two kind of separate things. And so knowing how hard your body's working at any given time is really important to getting the most out of yourself and the most out of your training. So what, Amanda, remind me, what are the zones that Concept 2 gives? Because those kind of can be all over the place.
Oh yeah, I'd have to look back and see what Concept 2 even said. Did any of you guys click on that link that I sent to Concept 2? Grace, you did?
Yeah, I did. They said there was an old-fashioned way of doing it, which was 220 minus your age would be your max heart rate about, and then they figured out a better formula that is a little more complicated that I don't remember right now, but I can look it up.
Yeah, that's all right. We can, if you find it, that's great. So what we do instead of using max heart rate, because a lot of training plans and zones are based off what's your maximum and then taking percentages of that. We do it kind of based on what scientifically you would call your lactate threshold. But for rowers, we would call like your 5K pace. Or for you guys, kind of your 4K pace, right? Is that the kind of distance hard stuff that you guys did, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we would say, guys, probably 4K plus 2 is what your lactic threshold, your anaerobic threshold is, which is your 5K.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of kind of complicated stuff like about finding your maximum heart rate, and then kind of a lot of not great things about that. So basically, what we look at doing is finding kind of what you would call 5K pace. If you're a rower, if you're talking about like how hard something feels on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be like a 7, like that intensity and heart rate that you're going really hard and it hurts really bad, but you can just barely hold on for 15 minutes, at a time, 20 minutes at a time. So that's kind of how we base our stuff. So kind of just basically like zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, like keep it nice and simple, right? And so zone 1 would be your recovery pace, or like if you're doing drill work, if you're doing pauses, you're rowing by 6s, kind of you're exercising, but it's not that hard. Zone 2 would be what we would call like steady state, right? You're doing long pieces, you're doing an hour of erging, you're rowing a long distance on the water. Zone 3 is something that we don't use as much, but that would be like hard, longer pieces at like an 18 or a 20, right? You might call it like full, kind of full pressure, low rate, steady state. Zone 4 would be from just below to that lactate threshold, that 5K pace. So that's doing any 5K pace workouts, like 8 to 12 minutes at a time, 3 or 4 times, right? Whatever your guys' go-to pieces. Probably like your 4, 3, 2, 1 would be, you'd probably end up kind of.
Yeah, that's that.
Right?
Yep.
And then once you get above that kind of 5K pace is where you start really like only being able to hold on to it for a short period of time. So kind of right there and just above is like your 5K test. A couple beats above that is your 2K pace. And then a couple beats above that is like you're doing it for such a short, intense period of time that you can't even take your heart rate because it doesn't even have time to register before you have to finish. Let me see. Can I share my screen here?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay.
But should you?
There you go.
That's the question. Can you guys see that?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
A nice big old list. So this is kind of a basic like guide to your heart rate zones. And so if you look at the column under zone A, there's a number in bold, and that would be what I'm talking about, your kind of like 5K intensity. And so how you use this would be to find what your 5K kind of pace heart rate is, that bold number, and then you can find all your other zones from there. And I can send this to you guys if you want. For most of you, because you're young and athletic, you're going to be probably one of the 3 or 4 bottom columns on there.
Yeah, like I'm quite a bit older and I'm 186 to 188. I'm around in there.
Yeah. You know, like I said, it's something that's individual for everybody, but for you guys, you're probably going to be a little bit higher. That's where most of our girls are at. So, you know, if you're doing something really easy, you're at under 168 beats per minute. If you're kind of high 160s to high 170s, you should be able to hold that intensity for a long time when you guys are running out to the far lookout and back, doing that kind of stuff. And then kind of low to mid 190s is the area where it's going to hurt a lot and be pretty miserable, but you should be able to do it as long as you can tough it out. Right. And I think that's one of the cool things for me when I train with heart rate. You know, like if I'm biking like up the skyline, like up a mountain or something, and looking at my heart rate, like I know that as long as I am a couple beats below that bold number, like that I can keep going, right? Even if it doesn't feel like I can keep going, I know that like my body tells me I'm not gonna pull up, right? I'm gonna be able to hold on to it. All right. And I can send that to you guys a little bit. So that's kind of your zones. Now, finding those zones is the fun part. What we do, the most reliable way to do it would be like a 30-minute test on like an erg bike or an erg or running. And it would be 30 minutes of all out maximum effort. And you start your heart rate monitor 10 minutes in, and you take your average for the last 20 minutes of that 30-minute all out piece. And that should end up being kind of right around that bold number. So if anybody wants to do a 30-minute erg test as hard as they possibly can, you're welcome to do it. Shoot me what your lactate threshold number is, like go to town.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. There you go. Otherwise, what I would recommend doing right now is starting to use your heart rate monitor. And when you feel that kind of intensity, right? Like you guys have erged and worked out enough that you know what that kind of pain and that level of exertion feels like. Like once you get there, check, see what numbers you're hitting, see what it feels, and you can kind of use that to base. But for right now, I would say if you're doing steady state, which is a lot of what we're doing right now, try doing it 165 to 175, and that's kind of the general range that you're looking for.
I have an update on the new, or like what Concept 2 shows, or like
what they suggest as your heart rate.
Yeah.
Go on, Peach.
So I wrote the formula down. I might just share my screen quickly so you guys can all see it so I don't have to talk as much.
What?
I know.
The first time ever.
So I think it's your age. So that's the formula, I think.
I'm looking at like a fish.
No, it's 205.8 minus.
She typed it in the search bar.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Math.
sorry.
Okay. That's okay. You're fine. Okay.
Yeah. There's
So
fish.
Stefan, what do you recommend the first steps are for people who don't have a heart rate strap? Like how can they start to get engaged with taking their heart rate and starting to kind of match that with their exertion when they don't have a watch or a strap or anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, if you don't have a strap, there are usually some other possibilities that you can try exhausting first. So like if anybody's parents have like an Apple Watch is probably the most common thing I see that has a heart rate sensor built into it, right? So if you or anyone in your family has one, you can wear that and start to get a good idea. If anybody has like a Garmin or Fitbit kind of sport watch, a lot of those have them built into the wrists. So if you don't have something super intense, you can look at those first. And then after that, it's kind of the easy, like find your pulse when you're in the rest of an interval and use that to kind of get an idea of where you're at, right?
What if you don't have any of those options? Like, say you just have your regular Casio watch with nothing fancy on it.
Use your fingers, Peach. But don't jam them into your neck, though.
So what he's saying is like right after you've done a piece, when you're in that rest period, immediately take your pulse either on your wrist or your neck.
Yeah.
And do the thing where you take it for about 10 seconds and multiply by 6, and that gives you the gist of how hard you were working in that last piece. But your heart rate's going to drop as soon as you stop whatever level of exertion you're doing. So like if you're jogging around the neighborhood, you can kind of check it while you're jogging, even, you know, just to kind of see. And when you're doing the hard pieces where you're finishing and you're like, oh my God, like, you can try and check right after on those too and see how much higher it is.
Yeah, and that, you know, that might not give you the exact number because you are like finishing working out. But if you do it the same way every time, you're gonna get a good idea of whether you're working more, whether you're working less, you know, how things are relative to you. And definitely if you can do it for at least 10 seconds, like 10 to 15 seconds and multiply it, the longer you do it, the more accurate you're gonna get for yourself. And so, you know, kind of those are like basics, like that. Those are heart rate zones, kind of those the heart rates to hit what you want to target. But the reason why is because when you hit those zones, you're going to train in the most efficient way. So when we do steady state, you know, when you have your just long and low kind of days, what you're trying to do is improve the efficiency of your heart and your lungs. And you're trying to do that in a way, usually that by the next day, you're fully recovered from, right? Like you want to be able to, on Tuesday, do 100 minutes, 120 minutes of steady work. And then on Wednesday, feel fresh and be able to come back and do it again, right? And so that's where, if you know your heart rate is in the right place, you know you're working the right systems in your body, and you're going to be able to come back and do it the next day well, right? If you're doing higher intensity stuff, It's making sure that you're working as hard as you possibly can. And again, that you're working the right systems in your body. If you have a way that you can see your heart rate on the fly, it can help you pace yourself, right? Like I said, it can help give you confidence that you're doing the right thing.
Can I just jump in for a second, Stefan?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, one thing that's really valuable about heart rate monitors is it can also give you some comfort if you're on the erg particularly and you're having a bad day. You're meant to be working in a particular zone with your heart rate. So if you're fatigued for some reason, you're not pulling the splits you want to pull. If you're working at the right heart rate, you're doing the work we want you to do. And that may just be a sign of overtraining, or you're exhausted from some other thing going on, underslept, underfed, whatever it is. But this is what, and I don't know if many of you watched that video that Amanda linked with Greg Hughes, but this is something that Stefan does, that Greg does. They watch the heart rates of their athletes when they do workouts, and they can see from the heart rate how hard you're working. So that way they can track how you're doing physiologically and see if you're overtraining or not. If you're struggling to do the workout, if your heart rate is higher than usual to do a particular workout, a particular intensity. So it has a lot of value to you that it gives you comfort that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing if you see the heart rate where it's supposed to be, even if the split isn't quite what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, that's a hugely important aspect of it. And if you use your heart rate routinely and have a good idea, it also really helps you kind of identify when you're struggling and when you have things to work on, like Steve was saying. Like how many of you guys have done an erg piece or like a even a water piece where you like feel in the middle of it like really lightheaded, like really shitty? You're like, oh my god, like I know this is hard, but this is like way harder than it should be. Like, has everybody had that experience? Yeah.
Sarah, you too, right?
Yeah, it's happened maybe once.
Yeah, totally. Screaming is so difficult.
My voice also gets tired sometimes. Because sometimes people don't listen to me and then I have to repeat myself.
I'm sorry.
Life's tough. So yeah, like it can, having your heart rate can help you identify those times, right? Especially when it's not, when it's not quite as bad as like feeling like you're gonna pass out or vomit on the erg or whatever. It can help you figure out times where like, oh, I didn't sleep as much as I should. And so my heart rate is way higher than it would normally be pulling these splits. Or I didn't have enough for lunch, so my heart rate's going like way higher. And that is kind of part of figuring out your body and figuring out how you can be the most efficient, fastest rower you can be. One really fun, easy, well, I think it's fun. One fun, easy thing you can do would be to do like 100 minutes of steady state on the bike, for example, right? Just something nice and long, something nice and easy. Do the same workout back-to-back days. If you have a heart rate monitor, take your average. On the first day, just do it normally. And then on the second day, do it and like take a thing of Gatorade and like drink some Gatorade while you're doing the piece. Or whatever cool electrolyte mix your parents have, or some sugary drink, right? And so having your heart rate, like what usually you'll see is that your heart rate over a nice long piece will kind of gradually come up as you get fatigued. And if you fuel yourself with a little bit of sugar or something during, it'll keep that heart rate down. Right. So that to me is something that's always fun to kind of illustrate like how having that knowledge of where your heart rate is can help you train better. another just kind of little tip about if you're doing heart rate stuff, give your heart rate line to where it should be and even out, right? If you're doing something kind of hard and you try to hit 200 beats per minute in the first 2 minutes of your piece, you're going to end up going way over that, and the roller coaster is going to come back down the other side, and it's not going to be that fun. It's not like a split. Like it takes a few minutes for your heart rate to kind of gradually come up to the effort level that you're at. So taking your heart rate at the end of pieces, right, or checking your heart rate a few minutes in will help a lot. And then things to prepare for and things to use, like when you're on varsity, if you have a heart rate monitor available, especially, I don't know if I'm going to make them required or not this year. They have been in the past. You'll use it if you're ever on the bike and doing a bike workout. We'll give you your heart rates to hit there. If we're running long distance, use that to pace yourself. And occasionally we'll have steady state days on the erg where you can just, if you have a heart rate monitor, you can flip your monitor over backwards, make sure you're hitting your right training zone, and then just kind of not worry about the split too much. And that's one of the ways we just kind of do a nice, not stressful, long workout on the erg on varsity.
I do a lot of my steady state where I just move the monitor and I have the phone next to me, and I just look at making sure that I stay right in that zone for the whole steady state. Because then I don't stress out about whether or not I'm hitting a certain number. Like Peach, it sounds like you're stressed out about your steady state number. It's if you trust yourself to stay in the right heart rate zone, then you are getting the benefit of the fitness without that sort of mental gameplay of like, I don't know if this is a good enough number. The people sitting next to me are pulling harder than they are. Look at their split. Look at their split. Everybody's body is different and everyone's heart and fitness is different. And we really want you to train in the right zones so that you get stronger over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always a balance to that, especially as novices, where, you know, you guys are like learning and getting better quickly and adapting to the erg. So like, you know, it is okay sometimes to push yourself, right, and do a steady state number that's challenging, because you're going to get a lot faster very quickly because you're still new to the sport. But that also needs to be balanced with making sure that you're doing a workout that you're going to recover for properly and be able to get to the next day and attack the next day like you did, you know, the steady state workout you were just doing.
Does this make sense, guys? That like the point is we need your bodies to recover day to day. Like that's why we don't just go out and do 5 2,000 meter pieces every day at as hard as we can go. You know, like on any given day, you can go up to your AT threshold and bang out 3 times 25 minutes at AT, but you'll be wiped the next day. And that's not what we're trying to do every single day. So, you know, Peach, your question again, I think Amanda and Stefan have both alluded to it. In many ways, most of the time, your heart rate zone is a better indicator of where we want you to be training than your split. Your split is what we give you when we don't know what your heart rate zone should be. And Stefan makes the good point that you guys are getting faster quickly enough that it's better to target a heart rate than a split, because that split could have changed in the last 2 weeks since you last did a measurement, you know, realistically for you as you get stronger. So if you can do it, it's good to train to the heart rate zones, and don't think you're overachieving by getting 15 extra beats a minute versus your peers right now. We want time, we want volume, we want you to do it at a pace that you can go for 90 minutes at, or even 120 minutes, whatever it is. That's what's really important at this phase of the season for you guys. So try and find your zone, stay in your zone, use that zone to help be a guide for you as to how hard you should be working, because we're really at a stage of the year where volume is everything. Sorry, I guess I bored Charlotte.
I did like an hour of power, like I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and like I was kind of sorry. Like I started out with like a split in mind, just because that's my steady state split that like I thought was a good split, but then I went up like 5 beats at the end. So, what should I aim my steady state split towards the hour of power? Because like during pieces where we have rest time, I feel like that'd be way too slow. And I know it's based on your heart rate, but like, say I don't have a heart rate monitor.
Do you want to take that, Stefan, or shall
I? Why don't you give your answer and then I'll
correct me? Perfect. Yeah, I mean, Pete, to me, it's basically a question of the total volume of work you're going to do. Like if you're going to do 3 times 30 minutes, I think you should probably be at that 5 splits higher number the whole time, because we do want you to achieve consistency. If you're going to be doing, 2 times 20, I probably want you at the lower number, but it a little bit depends on how much volume we're going to do on the day. But we want you to be able to be consistent, and we don't want you to be, killing yourself on workouts where we're not trying to have you kill yourself. So if we're trying to just get a lot of work in, doing capillarization and low grade transport work, like we want you to just get lots and lots of volume at whatever split. So I don't know, that my opinion is be guided by how many minutes of total work you're doing that day. I don't know, Stefan.
Nice.
Correct me now.
Capillarization and
transport work.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically what Steve was saying, you got to know what the goal of the day is and what the goal of your week is. If you're doing an hour of power at low rate and then the next day is more steady state, more low rate stuff, you're on your own, like, yeah, go for it, right? Like you can attack it at the end of that piece. If you're doing a steady state day and the next day is your hard or for the week, right? Or the next day you're getting on the water and you're doing hard pieces in lineups, then like you're just staying in that zone, getting a good sweat, making your heart and your lungs stronger and being fully recovered for the next day. Right. And that's part of the bargain we kind of make with you guys about all this stuff, right? There are a lot of high school teams in particular that are just like every day as hard as you can go, full tilt. But the bargain we make is that like, okay, we're gonna train the way that you want to train, and on a steady state day, you're just getting a good solid workout in. But then when it's time to go for the hard stuff, like you have to go as hard as you can for that, right? Like our long days are nice and long and nice and fun, and then our hard days are harder than anybody else's, is the goal.
Yeah, and I know that Jet had to leave, but it reminds me of a question she asked the other day, which I'll have you guys answer, so it's not just me answering, is right now when everybody's trying to manage their own days, when we have you guys for 6 days a week, we can hopefully you can trust us that if today we're doing steady state, then you'll do it at steady state pace. If today we're telling you to go really hard, we want you to go really hard. But when we give you a schedule of 5 to 6 workouts a week and just email it to you and say, please get this done. If stuff comes up in your lives and you can't get something done on Tuesday, but you can work on a Saturday and Sunday, you can move the workouts around a little bit. But Stefan can probably explain again, like why it's important to know how hard you're working on any given workout on a specific day, because you wouldn't want to move our workouts around and end up doing 2 back-to-back really crazy hard days, because then you're not actually following the training cycle that Steve's created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, you guys, there are 2 things there. One is we're at the time of the year when almost everything we're doing is volume and weights, and we're not doing a ton of of max or close to max stuff. So it's kind of up to you if you want to push harder on a day, welcome, and then dial it back and bring the heart rate back down the next day and just keep getting in those volumes. The only thing we don't want you to do, obviously, is don't do heavy weights 2 days in a row, because you're going to be breaking down muscle tissue and you have to give it time to fix itself and repair. But yeah, I think that's right. When we're at a time of the year when you can sort of pick and choose where you want to push yourself. But the main thing is to get the volumes in and not compromise that. I don't know, Stefan, what's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal of it. And that's where the heart rate can help a little bit on the steady state, especially because I know these are the times where you have to just work out with what you have available to you, right? So it's a way to stay consistent, whether you're running a workout or going to work out or biking a workout. The one thing I will say that I forgot that reminds me of, your heart rate will change a little bit depending on the activity. Running is usually the highest. And then something like swimming will be super low and biking will be somewhere in the middle. Usually your running heart rate will be about 5 beats higher than like your biking heart rate would be. Just because when you are running, you're standing and you're supporting your own weight and you're like working against gravity and working big muscles. So for the same level of effort, your heart rate's going to be a little bit more elevated, right? And likewise, swimming, your heart rates will be crazy low and all over the place because the water is literally like holding you up. So your heart rates will be kind of all over the place there.
I guess what we're trying to say here is swimming's really easy.
Yeah, that was my.
Also, swim team is not fun. Don't join swimming.
Another thing we can all agree on.
You heard that, right, Grace?
Rowing only.
Does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff we've talked about or haven't talked about?
I actually have one,
Yeah.
which is, and I've asked a lot of people this stuff, and I've probably asked you this before. I've never gotten a straight answer that I found compelling. And I guess the question is, everything up to your lactic threshold, or what, when I was a child, we called your anaerobic threshold, is sort of using the same, all the same systems. Then above that threshold, and guys, I don't know that we've told you this today, but I think we've told you this in the past. Once you get above that threshold, that bolded heart rate, your muscles are producing acid and losing efficiency. And that's why very quickly your performance starts to degrade. So that's why that number is very meaningful in terms of training. But the question I had was sort of, I've never gotten a good answer from somebody as to when they say, oh, we really want you training at, 140, don't be at 165, whether you're actually training different systems when you get to 165, such that you're not training what you wanted to train at 140. Honestly, I've never thought that was the case. And that, to me, the argument for being at the certain heart rate range is just what we got back to what we talked about earlier, just the volume, that we have volume standards we want you to hit without overtraining. But I'm just curious if sort of physiologically, is there some transition phase you enter as you go between like 150 to 170, say, where, oh, you're no longer actually using these things that we're trying to develop, you're using this other stuff over here?
Yeah, there are a couple hard transitions in there, right? One is like that anaerobic threshold or the lactic threshold that we talked about. One of the other ways that you can figure out when you're hitting that kind of 5K pace is like there's a physiological change where you'll go from kind of heavy breathing to panting, right? Like if you guys have ever started working out and started going like that's exactly that spot, right? And it's the same kind of thing when you start getting into like that zone 2 steady state, like your breathing will change. There are physiological changes there. But for the most part, you're correct. Like your heart rate is hugely variable over the course of a workout. Like if you can keep your heart rate pegged at 165 the entire time, like that's pretty damn impressive. When we're talking about any of this stuff, we're talking about trying to stay within a general range, right? And you're gonna get the good stuff from the work as long as you're spending kind of most of that time in the zone you're supposed to be. Creeping above it, creeping below it is not going to do anything physiologically to kill you, right? It's all pretty loose guidelines. Right. That being said, like things like the lactate threshold, you're going to know, because what that is that's when your body stops being able to pull the lactic acid out of your muscles efficiently, and it starts building up and shit starts getting real painful real fast.
So
What's that like?
Another way of explaining that is when you go out way too hard on your 2K and 500 meters in, your thighs feel like they're on fire. And you're just like, oh my God, what's happening to me? This is a bad decision. I'm questioning my life right now. That's because you managed to just go out and jump right into that wrong zone, and your heart rate followed you up there, and you're starting to create lactic acid that's just going to sit in your legs for the rest of the piece. And that's to be avoided. And it's another reason why after those really, really high pieces, when we tell you, don't just fling your handle and fall off the erg and pretend you're going to die, like try to keep moving, even if it's a loose paddle or if you have to stand up and walk around. But we tell you, like, don't just lean against the wall, try and walk around, because your body, you've crossed over and you're producing all this lactic acid that's going to just sit in your muscles, and we want you to like keep flushing it out of your system.
I feel quite upset and targeted, Steve, about your most recent comment. I don't think
where I said peach.
Yeah, I don't think I've personally started a 2K at like a 155 and then realized, oh shoot, what am I gonna do?
Peach, I'm just making fun of your memes account where you always talk about how you're a fly and die roar.
Oh, well, I thought you said you unfollowed it.
I did, but I still peek in on it every now and then.
Oh, Stefan, you should follow my rowing memes.
No, it had to come to this eventually. That's when you know that the time for the call is over, is when Peach tells everyone to follow her.
Perfect. Actually, you'll have to hit me up with the link separately.
Okay.
Except if it's on any social media, I probably don't have it.
I'll just send you the memes personally if you want.
Perfect.
There you go.
That's the best solution, I think.
That actually is. Stefan, she knows where her bread is buttered. I never got offered that option.
Make a rowing memes account on Strava.
Yeah.
Oh my God, should I do that actually?
No.
To ask the question is to know the answer.
Is there any difference training-wise between doing steady state, like super long, just straight through, or breaking it up into smaller pieces?
I think the answer is no, as long as it's reasonable sized chunks. But Stefan probably knows better than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you're spending time in the zone, that's fine. And honestly, for a lot of the things we do, like erging and running, you're going to get the same benefit from doing it for a long time, but taking a minute every 20 minutes to stand up and stretch out is huge for injury prevention, right? For most of the stuff we do, whether it's running or erging, like 20 to 30 minutes at a time is probably about as much as you want to do in a single interval before it starts kind of being a little bit riskier. And just for good practice, it's smart to get up for a minute and then keep going.
Yeah, I mean, Caroline, for reference, my daughter usually does, Stefan probably knows better than I do actually, but would do like 4 to 6 times 20 minutes with tiny breaks when she was doing big volume summers.
Yeah, and if you remember earlier when Stefan said, you want to drink something, even if it's just water, like being able to stop, get a drink of water, turn around, twist on the erg, stand up for a second, and then keep going, that has value. And that's the tricky part about the erg is if you just do a 60-minute erg, because your hands are busy, you can't actually stop and get hydration. And then obviously you can't really stretch or anything. So
I've done a 20K a few times, and I just take like 3 hard strokes and then take a sip of water while I'm rowing.
That is totally acceptable.
That's
Yeah.
smart.
Like I remember during like the hour of erging, I was like 20 minutes in, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna keep on doing this. I'm just gonna get bored and like I really want water. So then I kind of just stopped for like 3 seconds, got water, and then was like, oh shoot, my split went up so much.
My average split would go up like 1 whole 1.
Oh no, my average split for that like hour, it went up by like I think 6 just because of that one or like 1 pause.
One of my good friends in college set the 100K erg record for age group, and so I fed him bananas like while he was erging, and I just like moving back and forth with his mouth, like bite the banana off.
How long does 100K take? That must be like
6.5 hours, I think.
Yeah, it's like a double marathon, basically.
It was like a 1:57.5, I think.
That's pretty quick.
Thinks that my favorite workout is a marathon. I like went to like custom workouts, like or my custom workouts, and like there's like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and then last one is the marathon. I'm just like, heck no, I'm not gonna do this.
Get ready for this. This is going to be every varsity meeting next year, Stefan.
I can't wait.
I'm kidding.
Any
I'll
varsity
do it
meeting
one
at
day.
all sounds great right now.
Exactly.
The idea of everybody being in one room is just like.
Yeah. No, we miss you guys a lot. It's terrible. Yeah.
Oh my god, guys! Imagine erging not by yourself, like with someone else.
When that sounds good, you know it's been a long time.
Yeah, right. Well, this has been fun, guys. I got to eat dinner at some point.
Oh yeah, I accidentally missed dinner.
If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll send you a link to that chart in case you didn't get it. If we, at some point, Steve and Amanda, we can talk about like any questions about like being on varsity next year or anything in particular about that. I know we're still a few months away, but something I was thinking about today.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah,
sure.
It has nothing to do with heart rate, but do you know anything about dynamic ergs? Like,
Yeah.
how do the splits compare?
They don't really.
Okay, good. Because my steady state's like 222.
Do you have a dynamic?
Yeah, I got one from some old guy on Craigslist.
You know what old guys are like.
Yeah.
Guys, guess what? I befriended some 14-year-old in Tennessee named Bruce. He's actually real. I have mutual friends with him.
Let's shelve that for now, Peach.
The dynamic erg, usually like your splits will be a little bit off, especially as you get used to it, just because it's different. And the more time you spend on it, probably the closer your splits are going to end up to your other ones. And if you're doing stuff, if you bring the rate up, if you're doing like 2K stuff.
I've done sprints and they were way better than they normally are.
Yeah, because it's way easier to go back and forth because it's helping you along a little bit. So it's good training. It's its own thing. I would just compare your splits doing that to your other splits doing that.
Okay.
And if you start heart rate training, you can see if you're working to the right degree of difficulty, regardless of what that dynamic erg is telling you.
Well, my parents did agree to buy me a heart rate monitor. I have to pay for half of it, but it's worth it.
Well
All
done,
right, cool.
Caroline. Good bargaining.
I know.
I told my mom, and she said it could go on the list of wants, followed by Oakley's. So, you know, that will get there eventually.
I just wanted to be ahead of the Oakleys.
Slip it in
Those
there
are the
first.
things that makes you fastest,
Um,
obviously.
I don't know. See, Oakley's have been on the list since I joined as a novice, but you're not really allowed to get an Oakley's as a novice, or else you look like a loser. So,
Well, now's the time, Peach.
All right, well, let's let Stefan go eat some dinner, and I have a feeling some of you might need to eat dinner too. But email us any questions you have. We'd love to answer more questions. I hope this was helpful, and I'll send out the recording to the rest of the team. Thank you for your time,
Thanks,
Stefan. It
Steph.
was
Thank you.
really good seeing all of you. I love seeing you.
Yeah.
if you want, you
Bye,
can just do a
everybody.
Zoom where I
Bye,
talk about
guys.
my life.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I guess everyone's leaving now. Bye. Wait, are you guys not leaving? Oh wait, no, I should let Amanda eat dinner.
Okay, bye.